I'm finally done reviewing all the movies I wanted to review for 2014. I'm really late with this. I'm sorry, you can blame Mr. Yukio Mishima for that. But now I can finally talk about my 5 worst movies and my 15 best movies of the year of 2014. I will do the worst first because I don't want to, cap off talking about 2014 with the bad movies, and I think it's quicker for me to do the worst first. And as I mentioned last year, I only really have 5 on this list because I don't really see a lot of really terrible movies throughout the year. Not because I don't think any movies are bad, but because I intentionally don't really seek out movies that I hear are gonna be bad because I kind of want to save my money. I don't really have time for that. Now, as always, be warned that this list will have Filipino movies on it. And even if you're not from the Philippines, I know there's some people out there who are from other countries. Just stick around and hear about them because I feel like they're still kind of interesting because I feel like the mistakes we make in Philippine cinema say a lot about ourselves and our own movie scene. And take note, this is not a list of the most disappointing movies I watched last year or the movies I didn't like, subjectively speaking. But for me, these 5 movies I felt really kind of failed to accomplish what they set out to do. I mean, I may have liked some of them more than some other movies that I think were objectively good, but I just didn't like them. Here, I'm just really kind of trying to be as objective as possible. But before anything else, we have a few dishonorable mentions I'd like to bring up. First of all, The Expendables 3. I don't know how you screw up such a great, amazing cast. You have a fantastic performance from Mel Gibson, and they already did it right in The Expendables 2. I don't know why they couldn't make it fun and just ended up being really boring and stupid, in my opinion, in The Expendables 3. Hindi sila tatanda. This was the most pretentious Filipino movie I watched last year. It has the most broken understanding of what innovation is because I feel like a lot of other reviewers were calling this movie innovative and old school or whatever, but no, they just misused an aspect ratio. They had terrible lighting, terrible acting, terrible writing. I don't really see what was so innovative about this. And of course, this honorable mentions list is never complete without Michael Bay's influence. So first you have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was I've and of course Transformers: Age of Extinction, which surprisingly did not make this list, just barely. Some of the good visual effects saved it from being on this list, but overall this was, in my opinion, just the worst Transformers movie so far. I don't know how it beat Revenge of the Fallen, but this was 2 hours and 45 minutes of things blowing up, and I fell asleep in the middle of it, and I don't remember most of the movie because it was stupid. Alright, but then we get to the main 5 list, and the way I kind of distinguish these movies from the dishonorable mentions is that the dishonorable mentions, in my opinion, have at least one, good thing going for them. Even Transformers, I think, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had some good visual effects. These ones, in my opinion, have no redeeming factors whatsoever. So first of all, at number 5, we have it's a Filipino movie that I think is the strongest argument against all those people in this country who think that all Filipino independent movies are good because they obviously did not watch Separados. Now, if you don't know this movie, just don't skip ahead. I really just kind of want to talk about it. Imagine Love Actually, but it's really misogynistic, and it has no insight into its topic of separation because this movie tries to position itself as an essay about why people break up and whatever, but it's just so shallow the way they treat it, and the way they treat their characters. All the males are extremely unlikable, all the females are made to look like the worst people in the world, and it just comes off as a shopping list of reasons why people break up. Directors in general, I think, have so much at their disposal to really kind of make a good movie. They have so much to work with. They have good actors, they have good cinematographers and whatnot, but here I think the director JB San Pedro, he couldn't even wring out a single drop of genuine drama or comedy from all his scenes. I mean, this is something like an anthology movie. You have so many opportunities, but he just, there's no drama. All the comedy was unintentional. And you have a really bad movie when you can't even make the great Ricky Davao act well. He was just completely wasted here. And I also don't understand how this movie uses a wedding as a framing device, that somehow these 6 men all end up at this wedding together when they don't actually know each other. And I don't know why they're there. It just did not work. And there's this annoying background song playing in the background the entire time. All right. And at number 4, I will have to admit that I don't really go and rewatch these movies before making this list. I mean, because for my best list, I do rewatch a couple of those movies to just make sure where they fit on the list. But here, I don't want to waste my time rewatching these movies, so I will admit that I don't really remember a couple of these too well, and I really don't remember I, Frankenstein that much, except the aftertaste that left in my mouth. Now here's the thing about these big, stupid, like fantasy action kind of blockbuster type movies. I mean, even if they're really vapid and stupid, at least make them pretty to look at. And that's one thing that I Frankenstein just really couldn't get right. Like the CGI in this movie is just so bland. It's so creatively, bare. It looks like, really early PS2 level graphics. And you have a bunch of gargoyles flying around this movie who look just terrible. And if you like stab them or whatever, they don't just kind of crumble like a normal gargoyle would. Instead they explode into individual fireballs, and I do not get that design choice. One tiny thing that really annoys me is the fact that you have Aaron Eckhart here as Frankenstein's monster, and he's been alive for hundreds of years, and he's supposed to be made up of like individual rotting corpses, and he is extremely ripped in this movie, and his face is not just is that really the best you could do with makeup? Now, the director of I Frankenstein, Stuart Beattie, wrote this movie based on an unpublished graphic novel he had, and it's understandable why it's unpublished because it's not the writing is just bad. I'm sorry, like I just don't really understand any of the story. None of the lore really makes any sense. You can't really sell it believably, so it just ends up looking like an underworld ripoff. And seriously, this movie has nothing to do with Frankenstein. It's just there in the title to get stupid people like me to sit down and watch this movie. And you have a really bad movie when Aaron Eckhart is reduced to this one-note Christian Bale Batman voice impression for the entire movie. It's really sad. Now for number 3, we're going full circle with the very first movie I reviewed in 2014. Well, the first regular review I had. So it's kind of comforting that we're back here at ground zero. It's The Legend of Hercules. Now you thought I Frankenstein had bad visuals. Just look at The Legend of Hercules, and it's amazingly rendered 2D fire. It's PS1 level, like giant lion thing that attacks Hercules. For some reason, Hercules gets a lightning whip later in the movie, and it looks stupid. I remember when Hercules is in the arena, and he's fighting like a gladiator battle, and there's supposed to be like tons of people around him. You can tell that 9/10 of the arena are just a bunch of polygons made to look like humans, just kind of doing that the entire time. And even on the level of like production design, like they really couldn't even make it look believable. All the costumes and stuff just look really, really fake, like it's perfectly polished leather. The Legend of Hercules was like an hour and a half long or something. It was still 45 minutes too long, and all this movie was Kellen Lutz, Guy Weiss, and Scott Adkins just attempting to act. And I remember in my initial review I said that Liam McIntyre was the only like really bright spot in this movie, and when I think about it, his performance just really wasn't enough to really save this movie. I mean, he's a great actor, but he just ends up feeling really embarrassed in this movie. This movie has no idea what it wants to be. It tries to apply the Hercules myth to the plot of Gladiator and the style of 300, and it doesn't get any of those things right. It doesn't understand how each of those individual parts work, and doesn't understand how to mesh those together. I seriously don't understand how the director Renny Harlin went from directing Die Hard 2 to directing this. Now, number 2 is a movie that I almost did not review. I saw it, and I was thinking I just hate this movie and I don't want to talk about it, but eventually, just kind of figured I have to talk about Beauty and the Beast. Not the Disney version, which I know, kill me, I haven't seen yet. But even if I haven't seen the Disney version, I know the story well enough to know that any adaptation of Beauty and the Beast needs to be a romance story. That's what it is at its very, very core. And this movie had no romance in it. Seriously, this movie gives you no reason to care about Belle, gives you no reason to care about the Beast, gives you no reason to care about like the Gastonish character. And by care, I don't mean like positively, like even negatively. You're just kind of bored by all these characters, and the romance is literally just Stockholm syndrome. This movie also relies way too much on really, really terrible CGI, but what makes the CGI worse is that it's really inconsistent. I mean, you have some really violent scenes here with giant like stone statues crushing a bunch of people, and then on the other side, on like the next scene, you have a bunch of tiny puppy dog anime eye things running around, and it's just so weird. This really only goes to show that if you don't have the resources to do something well, just don't do it. I mean, don't end up making a bad movie if you know you can't make good CGI, or at least, get good chemistry out of Beauty and the Beast. Lea Seydoux and Vincent Cassel are good actors in other movies, but here they have nothing to do. There's nothing to their characters. I really must have missed something, because I know that in France, where this movie's from, it got a lot of critical acclaim. People were praising the director Christophe Gans for, really trying something new, and I just do not understand it. It was just so boring the entire time. And at number 1 are the 87th Academy Awards. No, I'm kidding. Like, I'm just really mad about the nominations. I'll talk about that some other time. But for my number one, I actually feel kind of bad for putting this at number one because unlike Separados, it's not very offensive. Like this movie has noble intentions, and unlike I Frankenstein or The Legend of Hercules or Beauty and the Beast, it's not trying to be something it's not. It's just it just really just kind of fails at what it wants to be, unfortunately, and that is Ibong Adarna the Pinoy Adventure. Now you've probably never heard this movie. Good. And I can summarize what I think about it in two words. That is styrofoam earrings. Yes. The legend of Ibong Adarna is supposed to be, it's supposed to take place in like old world Philippines, tribal, natives, and they're supposed to look like, natives and tribal people. But there's a close-up shot of Joel Torre's face, and he had an earring on, and I was so distracted I couldn't hear what he was saying because my jaw just dropped at the fact that they used styrofoam for his earrings, and they use styrofoam for his earrings, man. It's just extremely distracting and extremely lazy for them not to even put in any effort to make this feel like an authentic movie or like be at least respectful to the actual, myth of Ibon Darna. And it's not just the styrofoam earrings, like even like their costumes, like did they really expect us not to notice that they were just wearing button polos with like, really generic kind of, tribal clothing over it, which wasn't actually tribal clothing, it was just like kind of crocheted whatever, but you saw the buttons, man. They didn't have buttons back then. And like I said, I think this movie just really kind of fails at the most fundamental aspects of filmmaking. I mean, the other four movies on this list at least have coherent direction or whatever, but here it's just, editing and cinematography and stuff like that. It's just so terrible. Like the scenes are just, randomly tossed together. A lot of the shots are just way too blurry and way too dark. And seriously, the director of this, June Urbano, if I'm not mistaken, like I don't know how you couldn't just say cut and let's do another take, because there's so many shots in this movie where there's just something glaringly wrong and it's just so distracting. I don't know why he couldn't just say cut, fix that element and then take another take. There's one shot where like a I don't know, a fairy woman or something like kind of raises her arm and like her dress thing kind of snags on a branch, and she spends a whole scene with this thing just snagged on the branch, and it was super distracting. And I don't know why he didn't just say, "Whoops, hold on, cut. Let's move the plant, and let's move you." And it's just so lazy. Joel Torre and Leo Martinez are in this movie, and they're great actors. They're great in like on the job and stuff. But here, I just feel so embarrassed for them. I don't know what they agreed to by being in this movie. And this really, for me, is at the bottom of the list because of its laziness. I mean, for the other four movies here, I feel like they did actually try and produce a good movie, even if they completely failed at it. But here, just does not feel like they tried at all. And I feel like it's very unfair, like for people to say like, oh, this movie felt like a school play. I've seen tons of school plays, and those, the people who make school plays have so much passion for that craft. And here, I don't feel like anyone had passion for this at all. I mean, yes, it has CGI and whatnot, but it's terribly done CGI. And, like I mentioned before, if you don't have the resources to do it well, I mean, even if the Philippines admittedly doesn't have, visual effects technology that isn't as advanced, just, find another way to do it. Try to service your story through better means. Those are my 5 worst movies of 2014. I understand though that if you enjoyed one of these movies or more of them, I completely get it. In fact, I kind of admire you for that because honestly speaking, you're able to find something in these movies that I obviously was not able to find. So good job, seriously. But what were your 5 worst movies of the year? Whatever you thought, whether you agree with my picks or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.